Christian Wilkins started training camp on the PUP list, the physically unable to perform. Now he has been informed of his release. That plus more on Friday's edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast for July 25th, 2025.
You are Locked On Raiders, your daily Las Vegas Raiders podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome in, Raider Nation, to another edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast. Thank you so much for making the show your first listen of the day. Definitely appreciate you. If you're catching the show wherever you find your favorite podcast, or you're checking us out by way of the YouTube page, you know we appreciate both. Show continues to grow each and every day because of your consistent support and the great job that my man Ari is doing behind the scenes, making sure we look good and sound good each and every day. We definitely appreciate him. We shout him out. He's on Twitter at Ari Produces. You can hit me up as well at your boy Q254. And we got the Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line for you at 707-654-4693. Normally we have your calls and texts, but on today's show, we won't have any calls or texts in segment number 3 because it's going to be wall-to-wall Christian Wilkins, as we found out the news on Thursday. Matter of fact, late Thursday afternoon, Pacific time around 4:30, that Christian Wilkins was being released by the Silver and Black after starting training camp on the PUP list. It only took 2 days into training camp for the release to come. So as you can imagine, wall-to-wall Christian Wilkins. Segment number 3, we're going to actually talk about, and you're going to hear from a guy who could play a major role in replacing Christian Wilkins. That's Jonah Lauulu, a guy that I was able to catch up with after practice on Thursday. So in segment number 3, you'll hear from the big fella, second-year guy out of Oklahoma, Jonah Lauulu. Really good conversation and might make you feel a little bit better about the depth of that defensive tackle room. We'll do that in segment number 3. Segment number 2, we'll talk about the message that John Spytek, Pete Carroll, and this Raiders organization sent with the release of Christian Wilkins. And, of course, here in segment number 1, news and notes of the day that, oh, by the way, if you didn't know, it is all about Christian Wilkins. If you didn't know, now you know. We'll jump right into that after I tell you about the title sponsor of the show, and that's Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Now, it was wild. I was on my radio show on Thursday. It was almost over. It was 4:30. I know we were about to go to commercial. No joke, Raider Nation. We were about to go to commercial. I was about to tee up and tease the next segment and throw out the phone number to get some calls and texts and everything. And then all of a sudden I saw this tweet from Adam Schefter. And so before we went to commercial, I said, wait, hold on, I got to read it. So in real time, and look, I'm a guy who talks a lot, as you know. Anyone who has listened to this show for a day, 20 days, 20, whatever, you know what I mean? For the longest time, you know I like to talk. I was at a loss of words when I saw this tweet from Adam Schefter come rolling down. ESPN sources, Raiders are releasing defensive tackle Christian Wilkins with the designation of terminated vested veteran. His time in Las Vegas is now over. Due to how Wilkins treated the rehab from his foot injury he suffered last season, the Raiders voided the remaining $35.2 million of guaranteed money left on Wilkins' contract last month, and today, Wilkins filed a grievance with the NFLPA. I literally had to read that about 4 times. One, to make sure that wasn't a fake Adam Schefter tweet, right? You know, there's so many of those fake accounts out there. And then I had to process it, but I'm trying to relay it on the radio in real time. Like right now, I'm able to do it and say it smoothly, but I must have messed those words up about 5 times as I was trying to read it, just because, again, didn't believe it. Everything that we had heard, or everything that I had heard, at least, I don't want to speak for everybody, but everything that I had heard is that he was actually pretty close to coming back, and there was a chance that he could be available before, you know, the 4th game of the season, somewhere in between week 1 and week 4. That was some sounds and some thoughts that I had been getting from other people, and, well, clearly that was not the case. So Schefter went on another tweet and said, with the Raiders voiding the remainder $35.2 million in guaranteed money left on Christian Wilkins' contract last month, and Wilkins filing agreements with the NFLPA today, this is a situation that is far from over. The NFLPA had 50 days to file agreements on behalf of Christian Wilkins after the Raiders voided the money of guaranteed money in his contract on June 4th. $8 million for this year, $27.25 million for next year. The agreement was filed this morning. A legal battle awaits. So this is a situation that's probably going to get really ugly between the NFLPA, between the Raiders. Obviously, there's going to be lawyers involved. And I thought Adam Hill of the Las Vegas Review-Journal, he's also part of my sister station here in Las Vegas, ESPN Las Vegas. He tweeted this out. About to see the first real test of the new NFLPA regime, as the Christian Wilkins saga is probably going to get wild. Wilkins, on a side note, was the Raiders' player rep. So the player rep for the Raiders when it comes to the NFLPA was Christian Wilkins. Now, obviously, they're going to have to find another guy, but the NFLPA is going to get involved. And, I've been bringing up on the show everything that's been going on in the situation between the NFL and the NFLPA and how it was getting messy, and there was a lot of layers to it. Now, this is just going to add to it. And as Adam Hill said, it's really going to test the strength of the NFLPA at this stage of the game. Also, to Sean Reed from The Athletic, during the offseason, the Raiders determined that defensive tackle Christian Wilkins needed another procedure in order for his injured left foot to heal, per source. Wilkins disagreed, sparking a dispute that ultimately led to his release. So, remember, he suffered this injury in week 5, right? He had the surgery in October, and now we're looking at the end of July, and he's still not ready to go. All offseason, we've been talking about in a boot, out of a boot, out of a boot, in a boot, what's going to happen with him, right? And then, of course, he starts training camp on the PUP list, and all we're talking about and all I'm focused in on is he still on the PUP list when they get to the end of training camp? Because if so, he's going to miss the first 4 games. It does not matter. Ian Rappaport of NFL Network, Rap Sheet, he put this out, had this statement to make on the Christian Wilkins release, trying to summarize everything that had gone on. Check it out.
The Las Vegas Raiders with a stunner. Sources say Christian Wilkins, the prize of free agency just a year ago, has been informed of his release. 1 year into a 5-year, $110 million deal. Has got much of that $57.5 million fully guaranteed. Already got a $20 million check of it this spring, already still in the books for about, I believe it is 8 this season. The Raiders deciding they are not moving forward with Christian Wilkins any longer. This has been an ongoing saga for many reasons for the Las Vegas Raiders, but on the field as it pertains to Wilkins, my understanding is the team wanted him to have surgery on his foot. He declined several medical opinions, ultimately decided he wanted to rehab this. It has been a battle to get him on the field. Certainly there has been discord as it relates to Christian Wilkins and the Raiders. He has now been released. An early training camp surprise for Pete Carroll, for John Spytek, and for the Las Vegas Raiders. Christian Wilkins is out.
Ian Rappaport of NFL Network just kind of summarizing what had been going on with Christian Wilkins and how this had all of a sudden become a battle. And, right, a lot of folks saw, and I saw this on social media as well right before training camp got started, Christian Wilkins, a video of him in the Raiders locker room, and he was dancing to some Backstreet Boys sound. And I don't know, I never knew how old that video was. If it was old, I know the Backstreet Boys were in Las Vegas, so it seemed like it was pretty current. But if, they took away his money back in June, I can't imagine that in July he was in the Raiders weight room having a good time and dancing and celebrating all that. So that, to me, kind of caught me off guard. But this right here is what I thought really were the words that really kind of let you know where this staff is and how they felt about this situation. And matter of fact, before I even read the statement, think about this. Remember on Tuesday when Pete Carroll opened up the training camp with his press conference, and the first question by Vinny Bonsignore was that about Christian Wilkins and is there any timeline? And he was very short. Like, he didn't have hardly anything to say. When back in OTAs and mandatory minicamp, he was very detailed about the situation. He was saying it was frustrating, but they were going to do everything that they could, to make sure he was back. At this time, he was like, there's no timetable. Right? He was very short and moved on. So that, to me, is all playing back in my mind. But this statement from the Raiders on the release of Christian Wilkins, I thought was a very powerful statement. They said, "We have decided that it is the best interest of the organization to move on from Christian Wilkins, and he has been informed of his release from the team. This franchise has a commitment to excellence on and off the field. With no clear path or plan for future return to play for Christian, this transaction is necessary for the entire organization to move forward and prepare for the new season." Again, I thought that was a hell of a message by the Raiders. Normally when you see a statement made by a team on the release of a player or a trade of a player or even a firing of a coach, it's just like, hey, we'd like to thank them for their time with the organization, and we, wish them best on their future endeavors, yada, yada, yada. It's like cookie cutter, just replace the name, this, that, and the other, and whatever they did. If it's a release, it's a release. If it's a firing, it's a firing. But normally, that's kind of what it is. That's not what that statement was at all. Again, we've decided that it is in the best interest of the organization to move on from Christian Wilkins. He has been informed of his release from the team. This franchise has a commitment to excellence on and off the field with no clear path or plan for future return to play for Christian. This transaction is necessary for the entire organization to move forward and prepare for the new season. And that's exactly what this Raiders organization is going to do. So what did that message actually mean? What was the message that was being sent to Raider Nation, to the rest of the guys in the locker room, to the rest of the NFL about who the Raiders are going to be? We talk about them all the time. Serious, unserious, or for entertainment purposes only. I know a lot of fans have mixed feelings on that, but I'll break it down and tell you how I feel coming up in segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Before we get to that, though, I do want to tell you about the title sponsor of the show, and that's Gametime. Have you ever decided at the last minute to head to a ball game with friends or family? Maybe it's game day and you suddenly realize you want to be in the stands. Well, that's exactly where Gametime comes in. It's the easiest way to grab last-minute tickets without the stress. With the money you save on tickets, you can splurge on food, drinks, merch, or even invite a bigger group to come with you. Gametime makes it possible. Gametime makes buying tickets fast and simple. Prices on the app actually drop the closer you get to first pitch, and they've got incredible last-minute deals, clear seat views, and a lowest price guarantee that takes the worry out of buying. I like the zone deals, and I like the fact that you can see the seats. You got the seat views right in the app before you buy. You know exactly where you're going to be. No surprises. So right now, take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Again, create the account, use the promo code LOCKEDONNFL. That's LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, Raider Nation, here we go. Segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast, wall-to-wall Christian Wilkins conversation. Coming up in segment number 3, you'll actually hear about the depth of the defensive tackle room, right? Some of the guys that we could be focused in on when it comes to replacing Christian Wilkins. And you'll hear from a guy that has an opportunity to be a big factor, Jonah Lauulu, second-year defensive tackle, a guy that I caught up to after practice on Thursday before I knew of the Christian Wilkins release. So take that in mind when you hear the conversation. But I thought it was a very good conversation with Jonah Lauulu and may make you feel a little bit more confident about that room. But right now, let's focus in on the message that John Spytek, Pete Carroll, and company sent to the Raiders as an organization, sent to the locker room, and really, I believe, sent a message across the National Football League that this is a very serious organization. And I know a lot of people are up in arms because, well, Christian Wilkins cost them a lot of money. And yes, I know that they have voided the contract, but they ultimately gave him a lot of money for only 5 games. But one, I'll say that wasn't this staff. That was Tom Telesco, Antonio Pierce and company. That had nothing to do with John Spytek and Pete Carroll. And unfortunately, when you have turnover and turnover and turnover year after year after year, that's the kind of thing that's going to happen. And so there's other guys that have to come in and clean up, the other past staff's their mess. So, as much as Christian Wilkins looked like a really good signing, thought he was going to be a great running buddy next to Max Crosby, it just didn't work out, right? I mean, he played 5 games and that was it. I think that that's actually a good thing, is that the Raiders played all these games without him. They learned to live without him, and other guys stepped up, and so now they're going to have to do the same thing. But a lot of people look at the money that they paid him, looking at dead money that they could possibly have, moving forward. And look, the money's the money. There's just nothing that you can do about that. They're trying to obviously recoup as much as possible. But to me, this is a sign and a statement letting it be known that they're a very serious organization. And why do I say that? Going back to Indianapolis, the scouting combine, when we first got to know John Spytek, the GM, and obviously head coach Pete Carroll, we got an opportunity to catch up with him to talk all things draft. But I remember specifically, and I quote this on the show all the time, John Spytek told us all, we want guys that love football. We want guys that are going to leave it all on the line. We want guys that are willing to be there for their teammates all the time, do everything that they can to make this organization and this team a winner. If you love football, there's a place for you here on this team. If you don't, that's okay, right? But you can't play ball here. So hearing things about Christian Wilkins and, they wanted him to have another surgery and he didn't want to do it. They didn't like the way that he was rehabbing. To me, it feels like they thought he was taking this very unserious. And when you have a guy that suffers a foot injury, the Jones fracture, back in week 5, and now you're almost into August, right? It feels like you're almost, a year later, even though it's not quite a year, but it feels like it's pretty close, and he's still not ready to go. And then they're talking about, hey, you need to do this, you need to do that, and he's pushing back. I can see where the organization is getting frustrated. It sounds like, contrary to what some people were saying, that he's actually close to returning, sounds like he was nowhere near returning. And then as I thought about it on Thursday, it's so funny, man. I was thinking about just the whole process and everything that's gone through. It reminded me of Monday's Raiders Squad show. And we were talking about that. Chantel Chan, Lincoln Kennedy, and myself. It's a new show that we do here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Mondays and Thursdays normally. Well, actually, it's going to be Tuesdays and Thursdays normally, I believe. Or is it Monday and Thursday? I think it's Monday and Thursday. But it was Monday and Wednesday because Big Lincoln was traveling on Thursday. Chantel asked us the question about Christian Wilkins and how much concern the Raiders should have. And I was like, yeah, they definitely should have some concern, right? I mean, he's a guy that they're paying a lot of money. He's a big fellow with a foot injury. That can never be good. And, who knows when they're going to be ready. And if he's not ready to come off the PUP list before the 53-man roster, then he's going to miss 4 games. So, yeah, absolutely they should be concerned. But Lincoln Kennedy also shared concern and said the Raiders should be concerned. But he also dropped some nuggets that, unfortunately for me, I let slide by without really commenting on. I heard it, but sometimes you hear something and you don't really hear it. I heard it, but I didn't really hear it the way that I should have. I always say the best talker is the best listener. Again, I heard it, but I let this slide by. But check out what Lincoln Kennedy had to say on the Raiders Squad show. This is going back to Monday. We were talking about, are the Raiders and should the Raiders be concerned about the big fella, Christian Wilkins? Check it out.
When you cut to it, guys, we're in a performance-based business. If you can't perform, we have to move on. And it'll be unfortunate because he's a dynamic talent. But I do know this as a big man. When you have a foot injury, everything that you do is weight bearing. So even when you're trying to work out, you can't just sit on your ass for 6 months and do nothing but eat, because then you're going to get fat. So whether you're trying to do the recumbent bike or anything like that to get any type of exercise, even in a pool, you're still putting weight on that injury, and you're not necessarily getting it better. And sometimes it takes a little bit of a back seat. But to much of your question, Chantel, yes, the Raiders should be concerned, because there might come a time, and Pete Carroll's always about competition. Can't make the club in the tub, but if you can't compete, then it's hard to be a part of this team. And you might have to try to find a way. Maybe there's a wiggle room out of the contract. I'm not wishing this on Christian and his family. And I'm not saying that. I'm just saying, because we are in a performance-based business, yes, it is. The Raiders have to be concerned, and there might come a time where they have to move on, because, like you said, this injury lasted, back in week 5 of last year. So we're talking over a year, almost a year of time off. And he's not performing, and he's costing the Raiders big money. So there's quite room for concern there.
Lincoln Kennedy, it's always great to catch up with him and him be a part of any show that he's on. And, he always says you can't make the club in the tub. That's his go-to line. Lincoln's been saying it for years. He lives by it. And I back him up 100% with that, because that's the truth. Just like I always say, your best ability is availability, right? Well, he said right there in that little minute that he was talking, if you heard it and if you really listened to it, he said he felt bad for Christian Wilkins. It was almost a year, and he hasn't, been there yet. He's not ready to go. And, at some point, you can't make the club in the tub. Maybe they, look at his contract and find a way to get out of it. Like, I let that part go without saying, like, oh, wait, hold on. What are we talking about, right? I should have at that point said, wait, hold on. Is there a chance? Do you think there's a chance that this team is talking about moving on? And I'm not saying that Lincoln had any kind of inside information, but he dropped that nugget for a reason. And as he said, I'm not, wishing anything on Christian Wilkins. I don't want anything bad for the young man, because he's a really good player. He provides a lot when he's out there and available. And I thought that the first 5 games of the season, I thought he did have a nice presence. Even if you go back to week 2, when he helped Max Crosby seal the deal against the Baltimore Ravens. When Max got the game-winning sack, Christian Wilkins was the guy that took 2 with him, 2 blockers with him, and Max was able to curl around and get to Lamar. So he showed what he can do and be effective, but if you're not out there, you can't help the team. But when Lincoln said, right, maybe they look at his contract and they can find a way out of it, again, he's a guy that's been there, done that, right? He's a guy that's been inside the walls there, right? Part of the broadcast team. He knows how these things work. So, guys like that will look a little bit deeper than a guy like me will look. But to me, one, that made me immediately think of that. I immediately called Ari. I was like, wait, you remember when Lincoln said this on the show? Hold on, we got to get that soundbite. And so shout out to Ari, again, doing great work behind the scenes. He was able to find that soundbite. But I think that this message that is being sent, when you have the stones to move on from a guy like that, think about the Raiders of old. When the Raiders have signed big-time free agents, we know that a lot of them haven't worked out. And even when they've made trades, a lot of them haven't worked out. Even when they've made big-time selections in the draft, they haven't worked out. But how many times do they try to stick with them, and won't admit that, okay, this just ain't working, right? This staff came in, and it's easier when you don't make the signing. Like Tom Telesco signed Christian Wilkins, not John Spytek. So maybe if Spytek had made the signing, maybe they would have actually stuck with him a little bit longer and given him an opportunity to get back and kind of dealt with it. But when they didn't do that, they said, hey, man, we can't move forward with this guy. He's not serious about this team. He's not serious about winning. We are. So when we talk about serious, unserious, and for entertainment purposes only, as much as I saw on social media, people are like, oh, Q, back to entertainment purposes only. Not really. Entertainment purposes only would have let him sit, kind of do his thing and, not take rehab seriously and keep paying him, right? Being unserious. That's what that would be like. How many times have the Raiders done that, right? Gone out and made a move and refused to admit the mistake, right? I mean, how long did Jamarcus Russell, I'll go all the way back to Jamarcus Russell as a draft pick. How long did he linger around the team before they finally said, okay, we just got to move on from him? Right? I mean, there's been guys that they've had to do that with. Like Antonio Brown. How many chances did they give Antonio Brown before finally Mike Mayock was like, all right, I gotta let him go. Right? And if Mayock hadn't made the move to get rid of him, they probably still would have had him around the organization because of the extreme talent. Right? I mean, and there's other guys that you could point at. Right? When they have gotten contracts from the Raiders as free agents, they just kind of let them linger around because, well, they're making big money. Right? Guys that have been signed, way back in the past, even, former Super Bowl MVPs that were signed, let them hang around and linger around and won't, admit the mistake. It's what they do. It's what they've done. But this staff is not going to allow that to happen. At least that's what it feels like. So to me, it sends a message to everyone in that locker room. Hey, man, if you're not serious about what we're trying to do here, there's a place for you in the league. It just isn't here. If they're willing to, move on from a guy with that big a name, and who's expected to be that kind of a difference maker, the way that they were able to do after only getting 5 games of action out of him and him being part of the team for one season and willing to find the area of his contract like, yep, you violated this, we're going to move on from you. If they're willing to do that, I think that everyone in that locker room, that puts you on notice that, hey, man, if you're not here to handle your business, don't worry, we'll find someone else that is. We talk about Pete Carroll and competition all the time. What do I always quote? His first year in Seattle, how many roster moves did he make? Like 300 of them, right? Here's another roster move. This is not one that any of us expected. I didn't think that I'd be doing a show talking about Christian Wilkins is no longer on the team, but Pete Carroll's coming in, even though he's a player's coach, they're having fun, everybody likes him, but he also is no nonsense. As he said on Tuesday, I'm here to win a whole lot of games. He's not here to play games, he's here to win games. I think that's encouraging. Again, they could have just said, well, we're going to stall him out. We're going to wait to see if he gets better and is ready to go. But they didn't do that. So if you're Tyree Wilson and you're going into year 3 and you haven't figured it out yet, guess what? You're on notice, right? If you're Big Mike, you're going into year 3, you haven't figured it out for one reason or the other, some fault's not yours, you're on notice. I'm just looking at some guys that are on the team right now that we're looking at like, okay, is this guy going to be able to cut it? Right? Trey Tucker, wide receiver. Hey, man, if you don't have a defined role, if you can't let us know what you do consistently really well, you may not have a spot on this team. Like, nobody's spot is guaranteed. If a guy like Christian Wilkins, they're able to move on from him like they moved on from him, right? So if you're Max Crosby, obviously you're the gold standard. You're the guy that's going to go out there and bust it. There's no question about you. They extended you. You feel good about that. Isaiah Palomau, they extended you. Adam Butler, they extended you. So they feel good about what you're bringing to the table. Malcolm Kuntz, they brought you back, 1-year deal. Show that you whatever you can do. I think that they're sending a clear message to everyone in that locker room. And trust and believe, now that Christian Wilkins isn't there, I'm sure everyone in that locker room got the message, and they got it loud and clear. So what do they do next? Now that Christian Wilkins is no longer part of the mix, who's the one that could step up? We'll go through the depth chart real quick, and then you'll hear from one guy that I think has a chance to play a major role, Jonah Lauulu, second-year guy out of Oklahoma, the Las Vegas native. You'll hear from him next in segment number 3, closing things out on today's edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast. Before we get to that, though, I do want you to know that this episode is presented by Yahoo Fantasy. Fantasy football's back. Fire up the group chat, get your draft board ready, and buckle up for a season filled with breakouts, busts, and all the overreactions that we live for. It's all going down on Yahoo Fantasy. Lots of shows are playing Yahoo Fantasy, and you should too, whether you're a first-timer or a veteran making your millionth league. I actually know guys that have a bunch of leagues courtesy of Yahoo Fantasy. I mean, it's one thing. I don't get involved in fantasy football because it's so much work that you got to put in, but I know how much people love it. I know guys that I work with that have like 5, 6, 7, 8 leagues that they're all involved, and they're all there courtesy of Yahoo Fantasy. And to celebrate 28 years of fantasy greatness, Yahoo Fantasy is dropping 28 big new features over 28 days, giving you more ways to play, more ways to draft, and more ways to win. And it all begins August 4th. So stay tuned. Get started by creating or joining a Yahoo Fantasy Football League at yahoofantasy.com/LockedOnNFL. That's yahoofantasy.com/LockedOnNFL, and make this fantasy season the best one yet. Here we go, Raider Nation. Segment number 3 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Want to close out the show. Still talking about defensive tackle Christian Wilkins now that he's been released, but also who could be next in line. Who could step up and fill that void left by the big fella who, remember, only played 5 games for the Raiders in 2024. So if there's a silver lining to all of this, they're already accustomed and used to playing without him. So it's not like he was, Max Crosby, where you're used to years on top of years of dominant play, and all of a sudden he's not there. This is a guy who literally played 5 games, right? That's it. So they're used to playing without him. And in my opinion, they have some depth. Remember, it wasn't that long ago where we were talking about, matter of fact, it was Monday. Things, man, it moves fast in the NFL, doesn't it? It was Monday's show where we were talking about the PUP list and the fact that Christian Wilkins was placed on the PUP list. Or was it Friday? It might have been Friday. Okay, a week ago today. Again, life moves fast in the NFL, right? So we were talking about Christian Wilkins being on the PUP list and who could step up in his absence. Adam Butler, he's a guy who got the contract extension. Obviously, he's older in the tooth, but he played a big role last year stepping in for Christian Wilkins when he went down. Tonka Hemingway, he was drafted, right? J.J. Pegues, he was drafted this year. So smart of the Raiders to go out and draft a couple defensive tackles, right? They brought those guys in. They are guys that they're obviously expecting to play a role. Tank Booker, he's a guy that they expect to play a role, right? He was an undrafted free agent, so that's another guy. Trevin May out of Baylor, another undrafted free agent. So that's 4 guys at the defensive tackle position that they brought in this draft season, right? A couple by way of draft and a couple that they signed as undrafted free agents. Zach Carter, he's part of the mix. They've got Liki Fotu, right? This is a guy that's been around the league for 6 years. He's a veteran, so he knows what he's doing. He could be a part of the rotation. And then Laki Tassi, he's a guy that's in the NFL International Gateway Program. He doesn't count against the roster. He's a guy that I wouldn't expect also he's going to go in and play a role, but he's a big fella. Right, he's a big fellow that can definitely eat up some space, and if he can figure out the game, he can also be a big time player for him. Again, I would take my time on expecting Laki Tassi to all of a sudden step out and play a major role. And then there's Jonah Lauulu. Right, he's the Vegas native. He went to Oklahoma. He was thrown into the action. I think he got his first sack of his career last year in December, I believe, against the Atlanta Falcons, against Kirk Cousins. That was the first sack as of his NFL career. He's a guy that has a lot of promise. He's a guy that, as a matter of fact, Max Crosby spoke about him on Wednesday after they had their first day of practice. Max was actually asked about the guys on the defensive line, and he actually started off talking about Jonah Lauulu. Check it out.
Yeah, they've been great. I can't lie. Jonah is a special talent. Dude can play. He don't even know it yet, you know what I mean? But he's going to be a hell of a player. Tonka, JJ. You got Tyree, getting reps inside. And he's gotten reps inside in the last couple of years as well. But we got a ton of talent. And I trust those guys. I know they're going to be ready when it comes to game day because we need them. You know what I mean? They're going to be out there. They're going to be playing week 1, week 2, week 3, all the way through the season. So we know they're young, but we need them, if we want a chance to win. And I know they're going to step up. And Adam Butler, he's the first name I should mention. He's been here. He's been one of the best players on the interior in the league, in my opinion, in the last few years. So, yeah, we got a ton of guys, and I know they're going to be ready to go. And obviously, having Malcolm back on the other end people haven't talked about that, at all. I feel like it's crazy because he was just coming off the best year of his career. He's coming off a breakout year, and then he gets hurt right before last season. So having him back, I think is going to be huge for us. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to continuing getting better with him every day.
So there was Max Crosby going through the whole defensive line, but you heard what he said about Jonah. Like, he's so good, and he doesn't even know it. Like, he's a really good player and doesn't even know how good he is yet. Well, things just happen to work out really well. Sometimes it's better to be lucky than good. And the fine folks over at the Raiders, they've made a player available for me every day after practice. Now, it's only been 2 days, and the guy I talked to on Wednesday was Isaiah Pola-Mao, right? I had him on this show on Thursday. Well, on Thursday after practice, I caught up with Jonah Lauulu. They made him available, and good thing they did, because, again, he's a guy that could be tasked with helping to fill the void of Christian Wilkins. So here's that conversation with second-year man Jonah Lauulu. Here after practice with Jonah Lauulu, and it's only second day of training camp in the books now. How'd you feel everything went?
I feel like we're heading in the right direction, stacking each day, every day, offense, defense, D-line, O-line, receivers, DBs, everybody, all 11 on offense, defense. I think every day we're stacking it so far, but it's only day 2, second day of practice, and everybody doing that. So we got to see 10 days from now when we got the pads on, when everybody's sore, everybody's tired physically, mentally, emotionally. We're going to see, how everybody's doing then. So going into the preseason and the scrimmages, we'll see how everybody's doing then. But right now, we're definitely heading on the right path. We got a great guy ahead of everything. We got Pete, and then we got Mr. Spytek, everybody putting everything together right, and, trusting our coaches. And, I'm excited. It's only been 2 days, but, man, this has been, the best training camp I've had, even though it's my second one.
Yeah.
It's been great, I'm not going to lie.
And it is, like you mentioned, it's only day 2, but how difficult is it to keep that in perspective and understand that it's not a sprint, it's a marathon, and you have to continue to build those and stack those days?
I've always believed in that. Shout out to my Asian, actually, Buddy Baker. He always says that it's a marathon, not a sprint. He always reminds me of that, stay hungry and humble, because every day is different. Life is a roller coaster. You might have a good day, but you're going to have a bad day. It's not ever just going to keep going up. And, not being too high, not being too low. I'm just staying the course, we're preaching that. The whole team's preaching that, taking every day, taking advantage of this opportunity, because, not everybody gets this opportunity. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to be out here, represent this team, this organization, represent these fans, the great state of Nevada, Las Vegas, baby.
Right.
And, we're taking it every day, day by day. Like you said, marathon, not a sprint.
Well, what does it feel like for you? You're a hometown guy, right? You get to do this in front of, the family and friends and Raider Nation who's here loud and proud. How does that feel?
It's really cool. Shout out to my mom. She actually was at my house. She cleaned my house yesterday. Great feeling, because, we're here at like 5:45 every morning until 6:30 p.m. And, going home, see my mom clean my house, has some Boys to Men on in the house.
Okay. What was she jamming?
The house out.
She had that Boys to Men.
She had them throwbacks going.
That's that Saturday morning stuff.
So shout out my mom. It's a great feeling. To be able to be here, hometown. I got friends, family coming out to practices. They don't got to go far at all.
Right.
Get to go say what's up. I'm not far from home, and it's a blessing. It's really surreal and cool to me, and it makes me play even harder and give it my all, because I'm representing my hometown, where I came from, and this is what I've been dreaming to do.
Right.
And to do it at home, not everybody. Not a lot of people get to do that.
Facts.
It's really a blessing. It makes you go even harder.
Yesterday we had a chance to catch up with Max, and he said that you're really good, and you don't even know how good you are. When you hear that leader of the team say something like that, what does that mean to you?
It makes me want to die for the guys next to me on my left and my right behind me, my coaches, the offensive line, the quarterbacks. It makes me want to go hard, die for all of them, because, hearing that from Max, somebody that I idolized back when I was in college, seeing him come from Eastern Michigan to the Raiders, and seeing him be, an unorthodox player, and then going out there and balling, and now, he's one of the faces of the league.
Yeah.
It's really, I don't know, I would say motivational, because it makes you want to play harder, because these are my brothers now,
right.
And I would be damned if I let my brother down.
Yeah.
And so I'm going out there every day, giving it my all, just like they're giving it their all, because I'm getting them better and they're getting me better. And that's how championships are won, by the guys who cross iron, sharpen iron, and getting each other better every day. And hearing it from Max, that's crazy, because that's really my dog. And, I seen him practice, getting that work ethic from him and Robbie and Pete and PG and all them, it's different. And, this year we coming different.
Right. No, and we'll close out with this. You've been talking about, making sure you ride for your guy next to you. Are you getting that sense that that's the feeling of everyone in that building, in that locker room?
Oh, most definitely. I feel like we're really close already, starting our training camp. Yesterday in meetings, man, we're in there talking about X's and O's. We're talking about our plays and everything. And I was not dreading it at all.
Yeah.
I was actually excited. I was having fun. And like it was like a surreal moment because I'm like, this is really my job. Like I get to come out here and do this and go out there and play and have fun, play the sport that I've been playing since I was a kid. And it's just really a blessing to be able to do this. And I'm excited, like, and it's only day one and I'm saying this.
Yeah.
But I don't think I've ever had this feeling ever going into training camp or fall camp throughout college, high school. I've never been this excited for the season.
That's awesome.
Being here every day, coming here every day. I've never felt like this. And, you know, with Pete at the top of everything, guiding us through everything, I'm excited to see what we're going to do because the sky's the limit.
Expectations feel like it's going to even get better from here?
Oh, yes, most definitely.
So funny how things work out, right? Again, really good spirited conversation for Jonah. Hopefully you enjoyed that. I played that on my radio show, Unnecessary Roughness, on Raider Nation Radio 920, and got immediately a text like, man, that was a fantastic interview. Jonah's great, right? And so, again, he's got to go out there and put on. But this guy, he's fired up. He's excited. He's playing in front of his hometown, his family and friends. He's excited about that opportunity. He loves the defensive line. He feels like the trajectory for this team is moving forward. And, look, these guys in the locker room, in the building, they're not surprised by this, right? I'm sure they had a good idea of what was going on, right? We're surprised because we're just finding out about it. But those guys in this building, they already knew that Christian Wilkins wasn't around. They knew that they were going to be without him, at least for a while, so they've been preparing. And that's why they're out there and they're working as hard as they are and have been so far in training camp and even going back to OTAs and mandatory minicamp, working as hard as they were then as well. So hopefully you enjoyed that conversation I had with Jonah Lauulu on Thursday following day 2 of Raiders training camp. So that's going to do it for today's show. Didn't even get into any conversation about what happened on Thursday, what I saw, any observations, because all things was about Christian Wilkins. Apologies, didn't get to any calls or texts off the Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line. I know you got your feedback as well. I mean, honestly, I had to take it back. I had to do a throwback, man. It's Friday. Maybe instead of Throwback Thursday, maybe we call it Flashback Friday, and I go Q-Pac on him and do a little double disc. I mean, I know Ari, that's just going to be more work for him to do, but I don't know. I don't know. You're feeling froggy leap. That's what they say, right? So, you know what? Let's go ahead and do it. I do have I had a bunch of notes from day 2 of practice. I do want to talk about that because I do want to let you know how the team, not the guy who used to be on the team, but the current team, how they're looking. So we'll go ahead and do it, man. We're going to go double disc style, right? We'll go Q-Pac on them, right? And we'll do it again. We'll run it back. So this is disc number 1. Disc number 2, we'll talk about day 2 of practice. We'll hear a little bit more on Christian Wilkins. I actually got some more sound from my guy, Ari Mayrob from 33team.com. And we'll also get your calls and texts. How about that? We'll close out the week really strong, and we'll ask for Ari's forgiveness a little bit later. So keep the party rolling. We got disc number 2 coming up on today's edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast. Again, old Q-Pac style. This is how we do before you get into the weekend. So until disc number 2, take care of yourself, take care of your family, love on your family. Most importantly, as always, just win, baby.